Montiero! Blow!
Hey, yo, DiGi!
Eddy Gordo!
Eddy Gordo? Nah, man, it's Unrooolie. You know, Kenny?
Unruly man, you nearly gave me a heart attack. What's up? What can I do for you?
Well, I'm here because I want to know if you want to do a collaboration on Eddy Gordo.
Oh, what? A collab episode? Yeah, I'll be down for that, but just as long as you know, the only Tekken game in the series that I've actually owned was Tekken 4, and that's about it. So, my knowledge on the Tekken series is quite limited.
What? Nah, man, I got you covered on the parts that you don't know. I have Tekken knowledge for the both of us.
Oh, sure, if you've got my back, then yeah, man, let's go get it. Let's go, baby!
Oh, you in this? Let's do this! Fight time, baby, let's go!
Tekken is a series that pretty much went over my head during its earlier years. Back in the day, I simply knew it as that other 3D fighting game that wasn't Virtua Fighter, because I grew up as a Sega Saturn kid, which most of you regular viewers know already. I did eventually get a PlayStation though, and along with it came a demo disc of Tekken 3. Prior to me owning a PlayStation, I remember there being quite a bit of hype at my school surrounding this demo disc. A new character named Eddy was being introduced to Tekken, and he seemed to have all my fellow classmates talking about him. He was a Brazilian dude who fought with what we called at the time a break-dancing fighting style. The term capoeira hadn't really entered our vocabulary until Eddy came along. But anyway, this guy seemed to have earned himself quite a strong fan base right from the get-go. However, for people like me who are still fairly uneducated about Tekken in general, let's take a bit of time to cover Eddy's history and see what he's been up to so far.
You should probably expect spoilers.
So, to my understanding, Eddy Gordo's beginnings go a little something like this. He was born into a very rich Brazilian family. Eddy as a teenager was respected immensely by his friends and peers. One day, Eddy came home from school to find his father dying from a gunshot wound. It turned out his father had been collecting evidence to bring down one of the biggest criminal organizations in Brazil, because of course it wouldn't be a story set in Brazil if a criminal cartel or two weren't thrown in for good measure, innit? Anyways, his father got too close to nabbing the bastards and had himself shot up in the yard. Then, in what can be considered a somewhat bizarre final request, he tells his son Eddy to instead take the fall for the crime. His reasoning was that Eddy's life is now in danger, and the only place he can be safe from the gangsters is in prison. So Eddy agrees to this, takes the heat from his father's murder, and is thrown in jail. All the respect and admiration from his associates was stripped away, and Eddy's reputation was ruined, all because of a crime he didn't commit. Personally, if I was Eddy and my father told me to do something like that, I'd have been like, actually, you know what, yeah? No. How about I just use all the family money to escape Brazil, start a brand new life under a new name, a brand new clean slate, and just escape this madness that you've thrown me into. You're gonna send me to prison? You're gonna send me to prison? That's the best idea you've got, yeah? Prison? Are you fucking serious, bruv? What, are you mad? You're gonna send me to prison? Dickhead! But still, Eddy is sent off to prison to live a shitty life behind bars. While inside, he met a master of the fighting style capoeira, and for 8 years straight, the man taught Eddy this martial art. Eddy grew older, grew more bitter, and decided that when he gets out, he's going to use these new techniques to get himself some good old fashioned revenge on the bastards that killed his dad. He's freed from prison, busts a couple of heads, and learns that the dude responsible for his father's death was none other than Kazuya Mishima, one of the main antagonists for the Tekken series. Although Eddy was present in Tekken 4, he was more of a supporting character to Christy. She was the granddaughter of the master that Eddy had been trained by, and upon being released from prison, Eddy was requested to teach Christy capoeira. Eddy trained Christy for 2 years before abruptly leaving, so Christy went to look for him. That's about as much as I know in regards to Eddy's history, so I'm gonna have to tag you in here, Kenny, because I have no idea what happens next, so go ahead.
So after the events of Tekken 4, Eddy's master was about to be released. But when he got to the prison and saw his master, he was old, frail, a fraction of that man that saved his life from prison. He had to take his master to the hospital, and upon doing so, he found out he had an incurable illness and had less than 6 months to live. But if he had some of that sweet Zaibatsu tech, it could save his life. I mean, look at Dr. Boskanovich, look at Yoshimitsu, look at Brian Fury. So several days later, Eddy and Christy enter the Iron Fist tournament. After the 5th tournament, Eddy spoke to Jin Kazama alone. Jin offered his money, his resources, whatever it took to save his master's life. He even gave him a promise to find a cure for his master's illness. So after many military missions with the Tekken force with Nina on his side, after all that, he couldn't save his master's life. Eddy goes back to Brazil, goes to his master's funeral, and sees Christy crying over the coffin. What does she do? She turns around and gives him a slap. Bow!
Raw, that's a bit bloody harsh, innit?
Man, but the problem is, she didn't know what Eddy went through. She didn't know the deal that he did. She didn't know all the crazy missions that he had to do to save his master's life.
Oh, I see. But I mean, like, Eddy could have just told Christy what his plans were. He seems to have this inability to keep the poor girl informed on these matters, but yeah, that's dark, man, that's dark. Eddy went through all that shit for nothing. Alright, so what happens next?
Time goes by, around Tekken Tag 2, Eddy opens up an orphanage. He teaches all these kids capoeira. He realized, yo, my time with the Tekken Force was trash. And he says, you know what? I have one mission, and that's to get revenge for my father. Kazuya Mishima killed my dad, and now I'm gonna end this. And here's where we are in Tekken 7.
Visual design.
Yo, DiGi, I hope you can join me on this one because I know how much you like green, and Eddy's full of it.
Yeah, you know me, man, I'm all about that color. And Eddy's color palette was always the main design point that made him very memorable to me. Aside from using my favorite color, it was balanced alongside a secondary shade with equal yellow parts to match the green. It was harmonious in its presentation. What I really appreciated about Eddy's design was how these colors worked in contrast with his skin tone. The dark complexion of Eddy's skin allows the items of clothing to rest upon this alluring canvas, offering us a mixture of light and dark color placements across his design. The character overall looks very smooth while also appearing very vibrant as a result. He's got such a wonderful use of color to him.
Eddy Gordo's design knocks it out of the park. He wears a traditional capoeira abada. In other words, capoeira pants. While most are traditionally white, Eddy styles it up with the Brazilian colors and adds the word faísca on the side, which is actually Brazilian for spark, and spark is his capoeira nickname.
Oh, is that what that word is? I had no idea. I always presumed it was just some kind of sports label branding or something like Nike or Reebok or whatever. Makes sense though, and probably for the better too. I doubt Eddy would be seen dead rocking a pair of soap shoes, innit? But anyways, moving on to the clothing for his torso, and yeah, I mean, not many guys I personally know could work this kind of look.
Yo, let's be real, Eddy's the second dude to successfully rock a tube top.
But wait, who was the first then?
Yo, my boy Benny Maru.
Oh, from the King of Fighters series, right? Pretty boy, fabulous hair. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. And speaking of a wicked hairstyle, Eddy's got a nice look going on for himself too.
Well, he rocks the locks in a ponytail with a few hanging down in front to give him that badass Razor Ramon look. That hairstyle, that's the reason I have him today.
See, that's cool, that's cool. It's awesome when a fictional character's visual design is so solid that it's partly responsible for inspiring a person's own style. And I like that a lot. And it's hard to ignore Eddy's appeal, especially when his appearance does so many things well. Nothing ever really looks off on him, not even something as uncommon as a tube top.
As soon as you see this guy on screen, you know this dude is a capo from Brazil. He's basically a Brazilian flag that can kick your ass. And that's my favorite thing about his design. It represents his country and his martial arts so well. I like his style, man. It really just shows off I'm a capoeirista and I'm from Brazil.
Personality.
So, Unrooolie, with such a breathtaking fighting style, I'm guessing there's got to be a decent personality behind Eddy, right?
Just another reason why I love this man. He was born to one of the richest families in Brazil, but that didn't stop him from working hard and treating others as equals, which made him well loved in his hometown. Cause you know, with many people born into rich, powerful families, well, they could be real bellends. Did I say that right?
What, bellends? Yeah, you said it perfectly.
Okay.
Though personally, I wouldn't have used the word bellend.
Alright.
I mean, I'd probably have used terms like pussy-hole or fassy. Or waste man, that's always a personal favourite.
Should I just stick to USA?
Oh, an American term. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, it's your call, bruv. Go ahead.
Okay. They could be real a-holes.
There we go.
Eddy is a riches to rags to riches story. He loses everything, but then he gets all his money back, and what does he do? He opens up an Eddy Gordo orphanage and teaches kids capoeira. He's actually the second character to start an orphanage. The first was King, making these two dudes the biggest hearted characters in Tekken.
Okay, so Eddy definitely does sound like a good-natured individual, what with opening up orphanages and teaching kids to kick ass in the most flyest way possible, but he doesn't strike me as too calm of an individual, especially considering the amount of crap he's been dealt with so far in life. So, what's he like on the battlefield?
Eddy is a kind soul, but once he gets in that ring, it's all gone. He turns up the attitude. Before he even fights, he gets up in your face and he lets you know what's about to happen. You're about to catch these kicks.
Yeah, it's Club National, underground, thunder bounce when I stop the ground. Like a million elephants, a silverback orangutan, you can't stop the train. Who wants up, don't come unprepared, I'll be there, but when I leave there, better be a household name. Weatherman telling us it ain't gonna rain. So now
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Eddy's more intense side. You got to admit, for a fighting style that moves with such fluidity, Eddy's attitude gives the swings a whole lot more weight behind each strike. This guy is passionate, not just about the martial arts but the life he has lived. Eddy is a silently raging storm that bursts outwards in a flurry of spins the second he gets given that green light. After all, he was taught capoeira when he was at the lowest point of his life, just after losing his father and getting locked down in prison. His drive to seek justice was all being fueled by the martial art that was taught to him, and this has resulted in Eddy becoming a beast when it's time to utilize all he has learnt.
Importance.
To the Tekken series as a whole, Eddy might not be one of the forefront cast members that gets mixed up in the main plotline, but he has been connected to two major players within the series. Firstly, Kazuya, for being the man responsible for framing him and killing his father, and secondly, Jin Kazama, for offering him solutions to problems but then not delivering on those promises. With Kazuya, Eddy seeks revenge for what happened to his father. It ties Eddy to one of the main antagonists in the series, and it keeps a line of motivation for Eddy to follow. I do like the fact that during Tekken 5 and 6, Eddy did postpone his trail of revenge to help his dying master. This was a good break of pace and it allowed Eddy to experience other story arcs without making his revenge storyline become boring and drawn out over the years. This led us to Jin, the man responsible for offering a helping hand to Eddy. Eddy now has ties to Jin, who is a somewhat grey area protagonist for the series. Although it seems this short arc has now been wrapped up, it does keep Jin in Eddy's sights. Eddy might come to heavily regret joining the Tekken Force, making Jin his next target once he has dealt with Kazuya. That's merely speculation, of course. I'm not saying it will happen, but it is something to consider. With connections to both of these characters, it has kept Eddy relevant within the series without needing him to get involved in too much drama that doesn't concern him. Eddy doesn't waste space on the character roster by offering us a dead storyline with no movement. Each chapter to his arc has progressed the character further, allowing growth and maturity. Regardless of if Eddy was making the right decisions or not, right or wrong, the guy has evolved without stagnating his storyline or running himself into a pit of non-canon events. Outside of the game series itself, Eddy has also become important within the real world too.
Eddy Gordo's impact is huge. He made capoeira a household name. Before, not that many people knew about that martial art. There was a movie back then, it was called Only the Strong, that shined a spotlight on capoeira, but nobody really knew what it was. And after Tekken 3, he put capoeira on the map. It was pretty much a household name and everybody knew about it. And let's face it, yes, everybody's moms and dads played Eddy Gordo, hit the X and O button and started kicking and started making everybody mad. Which why he has a lot of hate, but that easy accessibility made him the top character in the arcades for quite some time, until people started to get the system. But to me, he's one of the most important characters in fighting game history in my opinion. And I just have to thank Namco so much, because they did capoeira justice. It's a beautiful martial art. Till then, all these fighting game characters were very tropey. You know, you had your characters of African descent, and they were just generic boxers, maybe a kickboxer. In some other cases, far worse. Now, there have been other capos in games before. There's been Bob Wilson and a few others that were done pretty well, but Namco did their homework. Capoeira was a martial art created by slaves. They did it to free themselves, and they hit it as a dance. In fact, it was so deadly, they were able to start freedom towns that could not be conquered in Brazil. This martial art was so deadly, capoeiristas were used as bodyguards and even assassins. But yo, I learned all this after seeing Eddy. And that's why he's well loved all over the world, for people who love capoeira. But for me, he's easily my favorite character of all time.
Conclusion.
As I said at the start of this video, my knowledge of Eddy and Tekken in general was pretty limited. Back in the day, I knew of Eddy because of the hype surrounding the character, but never really spent much time with him or the series outside of Tekken 3 and 4. When Unrooolie approached me to do this episode, I was interested but hesitant. Now that I've done it, I've come away from this collaboration not only learning a lot about the character himself, but also a lot about Capoeira too. Eddy himself has always been one of the characters that stood out to me the most from Tekken, and it's nice to have a much deeper insight into just who this crazy-legged brother from Brazil actually is, and that's a message I usually try to deliver to my audience through this show. Go out there and find new fictional characters to experience, even if they seem alien or out of your comfort zone. You never know what knowledge you're going to pick up and what new favourite character you might find yourself adding to your list. In closing, I'ma let Mr. 5-Time himself wrap this episode up for us. Go ahead, Unrooolie.
Yo, I want to thank you guys for watching this. I want to thank DiGi for letting me team up with him, and I hope this changes your outlook on Eddy, not just the guy that hits X's and O's, as this Brazilian badass who helped put capoeira on the map and shine a spotlight on this beautiful martial arts. Thanks for watching.
You win.